All right. Insecure. Season 5, episode 4. Faulty, okay? After last episode with Lawrence and Condola, I guess we needed a lighter tone. So we start off at a beach party with Nathan and his barbershop crew actually hosting a get together at the beach. Food, liquor, to kind of advertise his business. So, so as we show up, we see him and his cohorts there setting up the party, and his assistant, Risha. Shout out to Risha. Shades of Tasha from season 1. And I am so glad we got something above a 6, finally. And no shade to Molly, no shade to Issa, or Kelly, or none of them, right? Finally, we got a looker. So, good job, Insecure cast and crew, for getting us some eye candy for a change. Now, as we know, Issa and Nathan had issues from not only last season, but also at I think the second episode where Issa actually cried. And we'll get into that. Let's skim through the rest real quick so we can actually get into the main part, which is basically Issa and Nathan. Show up at the beach party. Evidently, Molly is back to season 1 Molly, where she's back on a whole phase. So she's talking about the dating and how the last date she went on didn't go so well because it wasn't so cool in the bedroom. So she needs to get her reps in with some people that know what they're doing. So she's back out on the hunt. So the old Molly is back, as they say. And as we see, she finds a couple of Nathan's crew that she's trying to pick between, and they're vying for her attention. And they're at the bar, and they get invited to a card game. And so they're sitting around there playing spades, which Issa doesn't know how to play. And they say, we're not teaching you how to play spades at your big age. In other words, you're too old. We ain't teaching you. Sit there and look. So they're going back and forth, and they're playing spades. They throwing shots at each other. The two guys from Nathan's crew is kind of vying for Molly's attention to see which one is gonna, as Molly says, they're neck and neck about which one's gonna see her naked, which is all good. Like I said, Molly's back, right? Molly's back to doing what she's doing. So I guess if you failed at the other stuff, you go back to your baseline. I guess that's where Molly is. It's a reset. Issa is her same old awkward self. We'll get into their interaction with Nathan in a minute. So they go through all this. They go to the beach. There's an earthquake, and Issa and Risha and and Nathan kind of bond, and well, we're bonded for life. And so, but the thing is, the beach patrol actually kicks everybody off the beach because so-called there could be a tsunami coming in. It's a tsunami warning. So they kick everybody off the beach. They go to the bar at Sharky's. They set up. They drink. Nathan's cousins come in. They sit around and joke around with each other. One of Nathan's crew wants to take Molly, Jason Derulo's Hollywood party. So they all decide that, okay, we're going to bounce from here. We're going to go to the Hollywood party and see Jason Derulo. And so they get there. Evidently, he was only supposed to bring one person, and he's got a whole crew. So they're at capacity. They can't get in, so now you got to wait. At the end of the day, he could only get one in because they're at capacity, right? So he's going to do it for his boy, but there ain't no more. So Molly decides, I'm going to get in, and I'm going to try to sneak you guys in at the back, which she successfully does. And as they're going toward the back, Nathan's cousin talks about the issues that they've had because evidently nobody knew that he had family in Los Angeles. And there's because of Nathan's mental condition, was asked to leave. He's upset about that. So he walks to the Overlook, Hollywood Hills Overlook, and Issa joins him. They kiss. All right. That is basically the overview of the episode, right? Let's get into the main part of this episode, which is basically just like Lawrence and Condola. We got Issa and Nathan. Issa's basically there to show up because of what happened last week because of Nathan. Okay. She set up at Nathan's event, but he doesn't need her there to run it. So she shows up. She's asking Molly, should she check in with Nathan, because they haven't talked for a week. And Molly says, just take it slow. Just go over there and take it slow and ease into it. That's not Issa. She walks over. He greets her. We greets everybody. Tells everybody thank you for coming. And Issa says, fine, thank you, but you didn't ask. In other words, she's already made it awkward. Like, hey, he explains, I'm just trying to get my host on. I'm trying to be a host to this group. And so Issa starts becoming very awkward and just started rambling as she normally does. And Kelly and Molly kind of walk away. She starts talking to Nathan, and Nathan excuses himself like, hey, I got to go handle something else. So she's kind of upset. She goes back to the bar. Kelly gives her a drink and says, relax, because she's uptight because of what went on with her and Nathan. And they get invited to a spades game. Remember that Issa doesn't know how to play, so she's sitting around watching them go back and forth. But out of the corner of her eye, she sees Nathan interact with Risha. The first thing out of her mouth, they're fucking, right? Because Nathan is actually helping her unstrap her Roman sandals. And so she looks down and says, well, maybe they're not fucking. And then in her mind, she sees these little sexual innuendos that Risha's showing toward Nathan. Oh, yeah, they're definitely fucking. So she gets upset. She decides to go back and get another drink. And then Risha calls out to her because Risha remembers her from the shop. So, you know how it is when you're upset, you don't really like somebody, but women put on that air like we really like you. That fake, hey, how you doing? Yeah, she said, hey, Risha. So she walks over there with Nathan and Risha, and Risha decides to go jump into the ocean, to take a dip. They leave Issa and Nathan alone, and they talked about it. They talked about what happened. And asked them, are you okay? And has anything changed? And basically, Nathan says, nothing's changed for me, as he's watching Risha jump out into the water. So this is how awkward it actually gets. In other words, Issa's sitting there wanting to say something like, okay, we're not friends, okay? But guess what she says? So that means we're still friends, because she's too afraid to expose herself. Because she set all this up. She set all this in motion. And now she wants to reverse field and come back to him on a rebound without actually having a discussion first. She's never discussed this. She just expects him to be there when she decides she wants to come back. And now she sees an impediment. Like, there is no door for me to come back. And the opening that she did have with him willing to spend the night with her, she ruined by crying. So guess what he asked, are we still friends? And Nathan says, yep. Thank God the food came and interrupted things, right? So Nathan's there. The homeboy comes in with the pizza. They have this discussion about it's supposed to be hamburgers, hot dogs, and ribs. You come in with pizza, and the homeboy says, I promised food. I didn't say it was going to be barbecue. And that's when the earthquake happens, okay? Tsunami warning. Kicked everybody off the beach. That, Nathan decides, instead of ruining the whole function, hey, let's go to Sharky's, drinks on the shop. Let's go eat, break bread. Let's go there. On the way, there's a girl car and there's a guy car. Nathan is actually talking about being friend zoned by Issa and her crying and him being basically a emotional sponge for her. And they're saying, well, how can you let her friend zone you like that? And they had, look, you do like, his friend said, you do look like a let me cry on your shoulder kind of guy. As in reverse with Molly, where Nathan's boy is trying to get with Molly with those big eyes and those sexy lips and whatever, right? And Nathan is actually confused because Nathan says she don't know what she wants. She's all over the place. Now, in the girls' car, you got Risha, you got Kelly, you got Molly, and Issa in Lyft. Kind of drivers kind of on the wacky side, like conspiracy bro, talking about staying off the grid, changing cell phones, and how earthquakes are actually planned and caused by the government, that kind of stuff. But and Issa's going, texting Molly about Nathan, and she believes that Nathan is actually together with Risha, much like Lawrence and Tasha, right? She's seeing this all over again. So Molly, being Molly, with her 87 climber ass, reversed back to hood rat. She said, "Hold on, let me check." So, typical Molly, Risha, are you and Nathan fucking? And it was, it seems offensive, but you gotta see that Risha is like a 85/87. So it's no big deal right to her. Saying, oh hell no, that's my big brother. It was like almost like blood. But I heard he can actually fuck good. I can set you up if you want to. And Molly says, "Let me circle back on that." So she texts Issa back, "No, they're not together." I guess this is girl talk. This is an odd way to see if somebody's going with somebody else, right? So now that Issa knows that Nathan and Risha aren't together, Molly asks, "What are you going to do about it? How are you going to resolve this?" So they get to Sharky's and they're discussing about what happened and the night that they had and her crying. And as Nathan said that she was crying and being all emotional and putting him in the friend zone. So, he said that after she went to sleep, he got up and he bounced. And so in the bar, Issa's asking him about that. That you basically, I was crying and you were holding me and you left. And she said, "Well, why did you leave?" And he said, "I didn't know we had expectations for each other." She was right. She wants boyfriend privileges, which is what happens sometimes if you're in the friend zone. You're expected to play the same role as a man would, as a boyfriend would, instead of, getting a reward for your emotional output, which he hadn't been. So he said, "I probably shouldn't have kissed you." And she says, "Yeah, well, I probably shouldn't have invited you to stay tonight." And what he says, "Well, I'm glad we cleared that up." In other words, it's been hanging over our heads about what we're going to do about this. In fact, for the whole year, this has been hanging over Issa and Nathan's heads. This half in, half out. Something that Condola had told Lawrence. Well, this half in, half out shit is not working for me. So, they get a table, they sit around, they're eating their taquitos and they're drinking their shots. And Nathan's cousin comes in with his wife. And you can tell there's tension because the wife is low-key throwing shots. Now, something I don't get about women, maybe it's not just women, maybe it's just insecure. It's supposed to be funny by them throwing in low-key shots, like hanging out with Nathan. You never know where hanging out with Nathan's going to get you. Yeah, and she says, "Yeah, you might get put on a milk carton." I said, "That's like, y'all just got here, okay?" And he's trying to host and you throwing shots. And everybody looks up. It's like it's in mixed company. You're throwing shots. And she threw a couple of other shots at Nathan. And, like when they're sitting at the table and they're talking about Nathan actually wanting to be the road manager for a band and how his life was like untethered, right? Without any roots. Wife Velma throws another shot at Nathan and said, "Yeah, Nathan's like a leaf just blowing in the wind." And everybody looks again, and people try to cover it up because it was another shot. They say, "Yeah, Nathan do be wearing those leaf type colors and stuff like that." And to Issa's credit, she actually does the girlfriend thing. She comes and defends him. "Well, I'm glad that he found me because I was all over the place and is loose, and he encouraged me to set up roots, like a tree." Which is a bad joke, awkward joke. But the thing is, she tried to prove that she was down for him, which I think he appreciated. So, right after that, this is when on Nathan's Boys has this party at Jason Derulo's, and they're supposed to be going in and not sneaking in, but invited to go there, but they weren't supposed to bring the whole crew. So they invite the whole crew up to the Hollywood house, and they go through some twists and turns, but finally Molly goes in with her date and she finds an opening to get Issa and her other folks in through the back way. And as they're getting ready to go in, Jason's cousin's walking away, and that's when they have a discussion and said, well, my lift is going to be here to take me back home, and you guys have fun. He said, when did you call a lift? I said, it was when your boy was actually shedding tears about not getting in to see Jason Derulo. And he's trying to explain to his cousin that it'll be okay. He's not going to abandon him, and he's not the same kind of guy. He said it's cool, but he says, nah, he said, I'm getting too old. And that's when he had the discussion about Jason's issues back when he first got to town, his manic behavior, where he kind of like bounced. And he was actually in and out. And he talked about Nathan leaving the door open and coming in at all times of night. He's got children, and it wasn't safe. So he decided to ask him to leave, but his wife, Velma, thought it would be better if she took the blame for him leaving. So for all these years, Nathan has blamed Velma. He thought Velma just wasn't feeling him. But he finds out that his cousin had issues with Nathan, so that Nathan didn't know how to take that. So Issa comes up to Nathan and said, hey, are you going to come in? He says, nah, you know what? I have issues. I need a minute. So that's when he walked over to the Overlook, and they got to discussing about what was going on, right? About her crying, right? He said, you know what? Yeah, I was going through some issues, and even though I'm not that guy anymore, people are going to still see me a certain way, and I can't change that. So I can't change how he sees me or the world sees me. He said, I can't even change how you see me, because he thinks that what he's going through has affected Issa, which it had, but that wasn't the reason that Issa was crying. She said she was just telling him this, the whole year had been a lot with Lawrence, with her business, even with up to the event of that night that made her shed tears, and it wasn't about him. And she finally had the courage to actually say what she should have, which is, I don't really want to be friends with you. And Nathan actually said, well, we already knew that Nathan didn't want to be friends with her either. Now, we've seen this before. We've seen this kind of stuff before, the way she approaches guys. She approached Lawrence the same way. That we have to go through all this stuff before she finally comes out and actually says what she means, which is the difference between her and Molly. Molly wears her emotions on her sleeve. Issa is actually covered inside her shell. So they finally get together, they kiss, there's an earthquake, and I guess it's a sign. So we'll have to see how this works out, because we all know that Issa still has Lawrence in her blood. But I do agree that Nathan is probably closer to Issa's match. Issa's an 89, and Issa is a bohemian, a lot like Nathan is. They're kind of like all over the place. They're not really corporate 9-to-5 people, whereas Lawrence is a lot more corporate. So I do believe that if I had to match a person for Issa to actually be with and actually match her quirks, I agree with a whole lot of other people. I think Nathan is the one, but we'll have to see. This one was not an easy review to give. I don't really give good reviews on episodes I don't particularly like, so this is like a punch in, punch out type of thing. I tried to give you the insight that I saw in this show, which is pretty obvious. I mean, you could pretty much see that she was trying to weave her way back into Nathan's life after a year of being off, after a year of actually putting him in the friend zone. I always tell guys, you're very difficult to be in a friend zone when a woman that you're actually attracted to. And what Nathan said was actually 100% correct. You're either her man or you're her friend. You can't be both. And once you cross that line, then basically she's not your friend, she's just your ex. And you got to be good with that. And I think this is how this whole episode played out. They were never friends. That was her ex. There was an ex that she's trying to measure how to get back into his good graces, back into his life. Is what it is. This could have been done within the first 10 minutes, but you know how they have to drag an episode out. But anyhow, that's all I got for this one. This is BGS out, and I will see you guys on the next one. Peace.